So this looks like an old logging road, and I think if we take it a little bit, we'll cross with the path. Do you think this bodes well that we lost the trail after like 30 minutes?
No.
Hi, I'm Patrick McNamee King, and you're listening to Empty Clouds. About a year ago, my friend Eunice and I went out on an overnight hike. We went to the Glastenbury Wilderness. It's part of Vermont's Green Mountain National Forest, and it's tucked away in the southwest corner of the state. We weren't planning on getting lost, but I do admit that I felt a rush of excitement when we did. That's because the Glastenbury Wilderness has a history of losing people, and it's generally regarded as a pretty spooky place. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 different people disappeared here, and somewhere among the dense forest, covered now by lichen and mosses, lie the foundation stones of an abandoned 19th century logging town. In 2008, someone else disappeared, although he found his way back to the nearby town of Bennington the next day.
It is mysterious up there. It is really spooky. The fog is just so thick, and there's moose and moss and pine trees and lots of owls.
Dr. Bob Singley is a composer. He makes music that reflects on his experiences of being alone in the wilderness. In 2008, he was a composer in residence at Bennington College, and he had writer's block. One day, he took his composing notebook and went for a day hike up Glastenbury Mountain.
It was an overcast day. I remember getting to the top of the West Ridge, and I think having some lunch and maybe doing some composing. And I wasn't prepared to spend the night, so I decided to turn around and walk back down. There's really only one official trail up there, and it's very well marked, and I do have a good bit of experience hiking, so what followed seems very strange and still unexplained to me. I started walking back down, and it was starting to drizzle, and I'd say it was around 5 o'clock or so, and I was going down, and before too long, it started getting really, really, really foggy, and I can't believe how quickly the night set in. It went from being normal light filtered through clouds and fog's light to almost unable to see very, very quickly. Before too long, it was completely dark, and then I was stumped because I lost the trail altogether. Didn't have it in front of me or behind me or anything. It was, at that point, it was drizzling pretty hard. I was getting pretty wet. So I set out to try and build a fire, but all the wood was really wet. And then I started shivering, and I knew I had the early stages of hypothermia. It was complete and total darkness. I couldn't see anything at all because there was no light from the stars. There was no light from the moon. I crawled around on my hands and knees looking for kindling. I was able to gather a big pile of birch bark. I built the fire up. I just kept building it, and then I finally was able to lie down and curl up next to it. I heard a fisher cat call, which is one of the most eerie, spooky sounds you can hear in those woods out there. And certainly felt like I was in some sort of other plane. The feeling of being overwhelmed with being lost and not knowing if I was going to make it. It's a gut feeling. Your stomach drops, and it's not a comfortable feeling, but it's a feeling that I seek out in my work as well with my music. It's become a driving part of my work. It's the feeling you feel when you realize you're truly alone, and that's it. And if you die out here, and the coyotes eat you, then no one will ever know. It's something that's unfiltered by society. It's a primal experience. It's kind of an animal sensation. I don't know how to really truly describe it, and I guess that's why I endeavor to describe it with sound and my work and my music. Obsession with this feeling and this sound really kind of blossomed. It was already in my ears around this time I got lost in Glastenbury, but the Glastenbury experience really formed it into a major focus of my work. I was having writer's block. And then after the Glastenbury experience, I composed so much and so hard that I gave myself tendinitis from using a pencil too much. There's a certain sound I think that I try to get in my music, and I think I've reached it sometimes, that to me describes that feeling. And I believe it's related to the natural resonances of the natural world, the sounds that we can't hear that are out there surrounding us all the time. These are feelings that are difficult for humans to deal with, I believe. Terrifyingly beautiful, but terrifying nonetheless. And they put you in contact with these things that maybe are the true essence of our being. And people don't want that. They're terrified of that. That's why they stare at their cell phones all day. That's why they have their social medias and their Snapchats or their Instagram or whatever, because they're terrified to get put in face to face with the reality of the world that we live in.
This looks like something.
Eunice and I found the trail after a bit.
That was pretty weird.
Even though losing it so early on was odd, we decided it wasn't anything to worry about, and we kept climbing.
All right, just keep going up.
We hiked for several more hours until we came to a stream where we stopped to filter some water and to rest. I relaxed on a carpet of thick moss and admired the thousands of black butterflies playing among the shaft of sunlight that filtered through the canopy above us.
All right, what have you been seeing, Eunice?
Black butterflies. There's one right there. But it's generally considered a symbol of misfortune and an omen of death in many cultures, while in others it is a sign of positive change. In many cultures it is believed the black butterfly is a symbol of transition, renewal, or rebirth. And this other place says, if a black butterfly crosses your path or appears in your dreams, don't panic. You may be about to embark on a much-needed journey of growth and enlightenment.
Are you on the internet?
I sure am. Who knew? It works here.
How's it going?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Just then, another hiker showed up. He had started the Appalachian Trail in Georgia and was excited to be almost done, nearing its completion in Maine. All across his body were tattoos of black butterflies.
I have butterflies sort of tattooed all over me. I started getting them after a friend of mine committed suicide back in 2018.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
So why the butterfly?
They just remind me of his spirit and how soft and kind he was.
Oh.
Yeah. I just sort of became obsessed with that.
Our companion stayed for a while longer to fill his water bottles and then left as quickly as he had arrived. I felt as though he materialized to give voice to the butterflies around us, and that they wanted to let Eunice and I know that there are places where softness and sadness join to form a delicate harmony. At the top of Glastenbury Mountain, we climbed an abandoned fire tower and looked out at the wilderness we had just crossed. When I closed my eyes, it was hard to feel anything other than a loving embrace by the ocean of green, the warm sun on my face, and the gusts of wind that played with my hair. Later, I asked Eunice how she felt on top of the mountain.
I think I felt little. I think I felt really little while I was there. That I'm just something smaller than like the greater of where we were. The energy that I felt, it didn't make me afraid. You know? And I wonder if I didn't feel fear because I was with you. There are some things that you do and say where I'm like, Patrick, that seems a little bit dangerous. But I think because like you're someone that I do really love and care about, like when I'm with you, I feel safe, you know? And so I don't feel like you would ever do anything to put me in danger. I also feel like I let people know I love them. So because they know that, I think like I have peace with it. That takes away a lot of maybe like fear that you might have had.
Eunice slept that night in a lean-to about a quarter mile from the summit, and I slept by the fire tower. It was a final good faith effort to test the mountain's hex. The next day we walked down and we hitchhiked to where we had parked. Eunice drove me back to New York City. We shared a meal in Manhattan's Koreatown and drank several glasses of makgeolli. It seemed that we had avoided the curse altogether. She kept driving, heading on to Baltimore, and I decided to go visit a friend in Crown Heights. Standing on the subway platform, I saw hundreds of phones around me, capturing hundreds of pairs of eyes, owned by individuals making hundreds of versions of the same decision to disconnect from one another and to plug in to what William Gibson described as a consensual mass hallucination. I felt my stomach drop, the way Bob described when he realized he was truly alone. I closed my eyes and allowed the sounds around me to be heard, and I decided to tell the people in my life that I loved them.